Welcome to Permission to Evolve. I'm your host, Brandon Thielk. I'm a performance and life coach. I'm joined by my co host and producer, Holly Deschenes. So, today we're going to be getting into shadow work. So, that's a little bit of a scary subject for most people. If you're not familiar with it, it's talking about the parts of you that you've disowned, things you're ashamed of, things you avoid. That's kind of this realm of the subconscious. It's like Carl Jung originally coined the term. In the self-development industry, it's kind of a big topic. It's how do you find these aspects of yourself that have been locked away and you can't really tap into them because there's a lot of useful things there. And it tends to be a bit of a hot button where it's uncomfortable and there's triggers there. We're just going to go into, a little bit about it, try and demystify it a little bit here, make it a little bit more of a comfortable topic, and also build the case for why it's such an important thing to do to take a look at these things. There are just so many of our potentials that we have locked up in this stuff, and there's a lot of gifts that we can unlock that can really take things to the next level for us. So, any first thoughts on this, Holly?
I think it's a great topic. I was recently at an event where the host she does a lot of sort of holistic alternative kind of healing work. But she was talking about the idea of shadow also, and she framed it up maybe not in the depths that you would find like Carl Jung talk about shadow work, but more in this idea of the shadow is anything you're not comfortable with was kind of how she put it.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you agree with that exactly, but
Yeah, I'm not a big when it comes to theories, I think there's so many different expressions of it. And I guess we're talking about the original kind of pioneer of the thought process. Obviously, I think it's kind of has a lot of offshoots now. And yeah, I think it's just kind of those parts of ourselves that we're not actively engaging with. It's kind of more in this realm of our reactions and how we feel, and it's at that deeper layer of the mind. So that's tough to get to, especially when maybe we're in autopilot on a regular basis. Maybe we're just kind of in a lot of practice habits. And the big part of what we talk about here is cleaning up the past, taking a look at it, shining a light on it. And really, the access point is just what's uncomfortable for you, what's bringing up these reactions. Because the way I see it is through nervous system regulation. And these are all just whatever makes the most sense for you to comprehend it. That's really our goal here is to just present it a number of different ways because it's just important to kind of be able to grasp what we're talking about and put it into practice because these things are very valuable. Through the feeling sensation, that's our access point to our subconscious. That's what I talk about over and over again is spend some time with yourself, pay attention to how you feel. And through our reactions, feeling drained, exhausted, tough, challenging relationships, people we struggle with, those all have clues for us about what's inside of us. And those are going to be things that fall under the realm of unresolved. Okay. So when I say unresolved, that means that there's some sort of pain there. There's something I've attached a negative judgment to. And then basically I've labeled it as not safe or not acceptable. I stuffed these things away. And as I go about my business, I can kind of override them. And for a period of time, we can get by with that. But then as these things stack up and we don't address them, it tends to grow and grow and grow. Right. And so it becomes a bigger problem. And a lot of these things that we stuff away or avoid, we get kind of numb to the signal of that discomfort too. If I tell myself it's not okay to feel something, that's like basically programming myself to numb out and shut down what I'm feeling or experiencing there. What we're trying to do is resolve the past. Okay. And so that's important because our past is always being projected into our future. And if it's not what we want it to be, we have that power to change it. But that takes adjusting our perception of how we're seeing the past. And it's that's the opportunity for growth is we have to get in tune with these things that are holding us back. And let's say they're not comfortable. It's generally painful things. It's generally negative stories about ourselves locked away in there. When that's just, it's coming from a younger version, generally in that 1 to 7 range, where we're just kind of downloaded all this information about our world that we may or may not be fully in agreement with. It's just kind of passed down to us. We don't really have a choice to filter it. And from that limited point of view, we might make some pretty rash judgments that could really be holding us back. We really want to upgrade the mindset to that of an adult. And that's this realm of emotional maturity. So when I have a big reaction, that's a part of me that's emotionally immature. So there's just some aspect that I'm kind of locked at a younger age because something was painful. I'm trying to avoid it, but I can't help but feel it when it gets activated. And that's going to happen as I'm going about my business, interacting with other people. Like things are just going to get brought up or activated. And so that just means that they kind of poked at a wound. Somebody poked at a wound and I have a protection mechanism attached to the wound. So I have a whole system set up for me to avoid feeling the thing that's painful. And so these are, like I said, it's stuff we've disowned. It's stuff that's too painful to look at. It's stuff we didn't really comprehend or understand from our limited worldview. And this, there's guilt and shame and all these things attached to it. Last week, we talked a lot about this mask of what's acceptable in society, what's acceptable in certain contexts. And so that's kind of this like fake part of ourselves we have to develop in order to exist and function like a normal person. And that's really what drains us. That's what wears us down. That's what kind of zaps our happiness or our joy or peace, whatever you want to call it. All we're trying to do is reconcile the past. And that means I need to take a look at the shadow, which is going to be the things I've locked away. And I want to look at it with a more mature point of view. So what happens is from that limited point of view, something painful happens, and then I start to tell myself a story about it, and that's the narrative. I'm basically saying this is a bad thing, and so my mind hyper focuses on just the negative aspect of that situation. And that negative aspect of that situation, if I latch onto it and I keep building it, now I have negative beliefs about myself wrapped up in that and negative beliefs about the world. So I could really be sabotaging my success. I could be shutting down relationship. I could be shutting down opportunities of these beliefs. And so it really makes our world smaller. And all we're trying to do is get curious about it. We're trying to take a look at these things and question it. The reality is there's positives that come out of every negative. Okay. So when I say resolve a situation, that simply just means we're completing the circle. Okay. And so that means like every situation has a negative aspect and a positive aspect. Okay. A masculine and a feminine. This is like Eastern philosophy. So all we're trying to do is we're trying to see the positive that came from the negative, and that's what resolves the situation. When something's painful to me, I'm trying to self preserve. I adopt this mindset that's I need to contract my nervous system and I need to protect myself. And my mind in that moment of stress, it just takes a snapshot, okay, of whatever stressful to me. And then I build a story about that. Okay. But that's a very limited point of view. And so when we go into healing work, all we're trying to do is take that limited snapshot that we have, and we're trying to zoom out. We're trying to see the other dynamics that were going on that created that situation. It's not as simple as we think it is. And so when we're able to zoom out, now I can see the different players, all the different things that led up to that. I can also take into account people's intention, where were they functioning from? My parents, what was their childhood like? What was their programming like? All these things, I can start to take a look at it. And basically, I'm trying to bring it to a neutral place so I can start to feel some peace over it. And so as I start to soften the emotions around something from my past, that starts to, my mind starts to loosen up about it and it starts to be able to do that zooming out that we're talking about. Okay, so as I soften the feeling of something, I start to get a broader point of view as well, because it's less personal to me, because that's things we're trying to protect ourselves. So if something's really painful, I have no choice but to really focus on myself. As I walk my way to neutral, I start to open up my perception so that I can see these situations differently. In that softer feeling, I'm able to tell myself a different story about what happened. As I tell myself that story, a different story, I'm able to see the opportunities that came out of it. So a lot of our pains are actually our biggest motivators early on. This really hurt me, or I felt all alone, or I felt abandoned, or whatever it is. So I formed this like independence with myself where I had to work really hard to avoid recreating that pain again. So I develop a skill set. I develop these gifts out of that pain, but that only gets me so far. Eventually, I'm going to be faced with that pain again because that's what's going to be holding me back to my next level. That's why we don't really do this work until we have to do this work. So that could be a big life transition. That could be like health concerns, health issues. It could be financial issues. It could be things that we can't really move forward anymore until we take a look at these things. When we're faced with that pain again, okay, the next version of us is going to be the person that's free of that pain, but has all those skills that came from it. So as we take a look at the shadow, we start to question it and ask, is there a different way of seeing this? Do I really have to hate this person? Do I really have to blame everybody? Or has this served me in some way? And the difference between somebody that's successful or somebody that's a victim is really this mindset is like, do I continue to tell myself that same negative story over and over again and use that as my excuse for not moving forward? Or do I shift my mind to see it as a growth opportunity? Do I see it in a way that gives me a path forward where I can continue to evolve? And we might get a deep purpose out of that. If we had a really big pain and we want to prevent that pain for other people in the future so they don't have to experience what we experienced, that can really start to build a purpose for us that's really meaningful. That's about conquering the pain and letting it go rather than holding on to it forever. The shadow is just really in survival mode in these moments of stress. I had to learn to be a certain way. And so I had to suppress parts of myself. I had to shut things down. I had to abandon or betray myself. I had to act according to whatever the environment dictated in order to be safe in that moment. And I might still be operating under those ideas, even though my life may be dramatically different. So these things might not even be a concern anymore, but we haven't updated our mind about it. We're still stuck in the same mature mindset about it, which is just that snapshot. It's not the big picture. This is bad, and I'm just gonna continue to tell myself why it's bad, and I'm gonna validate that over and over again until I build a wall within my nervous system, which is a workaround, right? It's like I'm avoiding things because I've built this wall within myself because that was painful. And we need to do that in certain environments. If something's very volatile, abusive environment, things like that, I'm probably going to need to suppress a lot. I'm probably going to need to shut down myself. I'm probably going to be more quiet, not speak up as much. And I'm going to do these adaptations to get by given the circumstances. Oftentimes, like those are the exact things that we're struggling with today that are keeping us from the things we want. So that's really the importance of shadow work is you have to trust that at this stage in your life, you have a different perspective and we're just trying to shine a light into the darkness that, hey, like this doesn't really have to be a big deal anymore. It was at one point, and we're validating that part of ourselves. But we're also trying to see the good things that came out of it. We're starting to try and open up our perception to how how has this been a gift for me? What can I utilize this for in my purpose, right? We start to access these different things, and it is dictated by our mood and our reactions and all those things. That's a sure sign that there's things in our subconscious that we're not aware of that's deeply affecting us. We can ignore that signal, but eventually it stacks up. And that's this realm of chronic stress of pretty much every illness and disease stems from the body being in stress constantly. And it's always this mental, emotional stress, to be honest with you. Like it's the things we're not looking at that are bothering us in the back of our mind because we can't truly relax. We can't truly have peace until we shift our relationship with it. So that's kind of the overview here is you don't really do this work until you need to. And you need to when doors start closing for you, when you have no choice but to upgrade in some way. And that can mean I need to live a healthier lifestyle. My relationships aren't working. I'm getting burned out at work. A lot of people develop the workaholic kind of mentality to avoid these things where I'm just going to bury myself into work so I don't have to think about my past, the painful things. And all these things have an expiration date. There's a point where they no longer work anymore. And that's where we're being pushed to evolve. And generally, evolving is about developing a deeper thought process. That means bringing maturity to the immature aspects of ourselves, which is going to be that stuff that's locked away in the shadow.
I resemble a number of things you just said there in terms of some of those things, but so I'm thinking a little bit about, you gave a few examples of what could be like causing the shadow, but I'm thinking a little bit about framing something up for folks around the judgment that gets attached or things that are deemed as negative emotions, and maybe some examples of those that you could talk through just to help ground this conversation a little bit. So I'm
Mhm,
thinking envy, procrastination,
mhm,
judgment. I'm trying to think of ones that people typically would call negative and
mhm,
might attach that, where they definitely are like, oh, I am now bad
mhm.
because I have XYZ feeling.
In those realms, yeah, it's like shamed behaviors. Honestly, we all have them. It's just whether we're aware of them or not. So, yeah, like jealousy, envy, bitterness, resentment, insecurities, things of that nature. It's not safe to have this stuff. But in our reaction, we usually project those behaviors, right? And so that's the shadow is kind of where we resolve these things. Like, why am I jealous? What about this person am I not in agreement with? Or what is it that they have that I want? So it's all clues to go deeper. And insecurities is just this person's that comparison generally, where it's, oh, this person's really good at this and I struggle at it. So I have to pretend I'm good at it. And anywhere where I'm faking it, there's going to be a reaction. I'm going to try and cover up the insecurity. I'm going to try and I might project. I might tell that person, oh, you're just jealous of me when I'm actually jealous of them. All these different dynamics, the mind's always trying to go external with things and that it never gets resolved externally. Okay. We're just playing a game out here. It only gets resolved internally. That's what we're talking about here. When did I start to feel that way? Yeah. Why do I resent this person? Resentment is going to be like, they did something that that I feel like damaged me or took a part of me. That's in power dynamics, right? I felt like I had to do this. That's why many people have so much resentment towards their parents because your parents are doing the best they can and they're trying to raise you and there's all these like rules to conform with in society. There is these aspects where to get by, we kind of do have to put on that mask. We have to shut ourselves down. We have to behave in a way that might not be natural for us. And so in that place, we feel like we've lost a part of ourselves. We've never lost it. We've just tucked it away and we've told ourselves it's not okay. And that's what shame is. Shame is suppresses our expression. Okay? So I have to shut down these aspects of myself in order to be safe. We're talking about these environments where you're expected to be a certain way in order to keep the peace or whatever it is. So people pleasing is another version. Procrastination, that could be like just simply, one, I don't like the work I'm doing, or I feel like I'm not aligned with it, or I don't feel like there's integrity there. That's like part of myself is shutting down because I'm not in agreement with something. And so it's always going a little bit deeper. Of why am I not able to move forward? What am I not in agreement with? It's by asking these deeper questions that we get access to what's really underneath it all. These are all protection mechanisms. It's all stuff that was designed to keep us safe at one point. And it's just generally in conflict with our full expression or our authentic self or the truth of who we are. Or we could just put all these terms on it. It's just like, where am I filtering my energy? That's really how I like to see it, is like I'm suppressing an aspect of myself and it's not, the energy's not running through like what's blocking it. We could say it's an energy block, a mental block, emotional block. These are all different ideas of the same thing. It's just like, where is it not okay for me to be this way? Where did I learn that? Is that true? It's taking these things and questioning them to see if, well, I'm locking myself up. I'm suppressing things. Well, like it takes a lot of energy to suppress stuff. Okay. So when we're in flow and things are very natural, like we're not thinking much, we're not trying to protect ourselves. That's really what peak performance is. is I'm just getting out of my own way and I'm just showing up and being present and I'm doing what I know how to do. Okay. So that's what peak performance is. And these things tell us it's not safe to be that way. Like I need to develop some sort of strategy or I need to show up the way that people want me to. And that's how I'm going to get validation, love, acceptance, all those things that I'm after. The mind is such an interesting thing where it's judgment is this idea of I'm just using my past to make sense right now. And if my past wasn't optimal, if there's a lot of pain there, I'm automatically going to have a lot of negative judgments. That's just like how that gets created. We're trying to clean the lens of perception, which means I'm able to judge things more accurately. Okay. So I'm not seeing things through a lens of pain anymore. I'm seeing it objectively, meaning I'm just present and I'm observing something, and this is my observation. I'm not attaching the big story about good or bad or whatever it is, right? So that's what duality is there's good or bad, lose or win, that kind of thing, all or none. So we're finding the middle ground of how can I just be present and see things for what they are, because that's what reality is. But a lot of us think we're functioning in reality, but we're functioning from old stories from the past, which is hindering our present moment. Okay. I'm filtering information that's flawed because it's built on pain. And that's what's causing me to shut down and protect myself. That's where we're going to have things like anxiety creep up, irrational fears, with kind of all the polarizing things in the world. It's like us versus them, right? It's these ways of thinking. We're just trying to slap a label on something and call it that so I can protect myself from it. That's closing my world off. That's actually making me miserable when I do that because I'm stressing myself out. I'm operating out of fear and pain. And so that's never going to be an optimal way to be. Okay. That's why it's an invitation. It's why am I so unhappy? Why do I feel like I need to protect myself from everybody? Why do I feel like I judge everybody? Right. And being super judgmental, that basically means you like cemented all these ideas a long time ago and you haven't questioned them. And so they're very practiced. That's a quick way to survive is like if I was just gonna make snap judgments about things. But are we talking about survival or actually living your life? Okay, those are two different things. Survival is just I'm just scraping by. I'm just trying to get through the day. Most people don't really want that. But they also don't want to step into confronting their fears, also being wrong about things. So the ego is this idea that I have this self-image. I'm going to try and preserve that at all costs. So whether I'm right or wrong, I'm going to own that because that's wrapped up in my identity. And so we work to surrender some of these things because what you think is you is actually what's making you miserable. And it's not you. It's just a way you've learned to be. And you've attached your identity to it and the victim stories and all that stuff. We all have things that happen, and there's so many. There are a lot of painful things and terrible things, but do we want to do we want that to be our entire experience? Is just focusing on those things, or do we want to get to this relaxed state where we can also see the beauty in life and actually be open to it? So that's the thing is judgment's kind of this. That's our decision making tool of like what do I believe about this? How am I interpreting this thing? And if it's a negative story immediately, generally, that's got a long history in the past. I immediately put myself into protection. I'm on guard. There's something about this situation that I need to preserve myself. So I go inward and I become self absorbed, narcissistic, those types of things where it's all about me. And we see a lot of this in the world where that's kind of one of my gripes with therapy is just like all the labeling and diagnosing and all things. Like everybody's protecting these things that are making them miserable when really we need to learn to work through them and soften them and see these situations differently so that I can exist in the world with everything around me and feel okay and feel safe. And so it is about creating safety. And the only way we create the safety is we address the issues that created the anxieties and the fears. Okay. And so many of these really that scary anymore, but we still think they are because of how we feel. The discomfort has the coping mechanism attached to it. So as soon as I get triggered, I have a practice pattern of how I avoid those feelings. And that's what keeps me stuck in all these loops and patterns where I can't move forward in my life. or I sabotage all the new things in my life because I'm rejecting them before before I really wrap my mind around it. I'm pushing things away that might actually be huge blessings for me, but my mind's so closed off that I can't see that. When we take a look at the deeper layers, it really is about how can I find peace over my past? Because if I don't do that subconsciously, I'm motivated to continue to create the same problems over and over again until I do this work, until I take a look at it and choose differently. We're talking about bringing the subconscious to the conscious mind, which is the conscious mind's like a spotlight that I'm consciously aware of. When I feel these things come up, I can slow down and I can go into them and learn about them so I can see what's motivating me. I can see where I'm trying to avoid things. If I go into that rather than run away from it, now that's growth. That's something that I can learn from, and that's going to transform me if I allow it to. And so all these things, the feeling is always an invitation. It's just getting to that place of associating discomfort with I bumped up against a limitation in my world, and I have this protection mechanism engaged that I want to do certain things so I can escape this danger. But most things literally aren't danger. It's just your negative perception of things that's closing off your world where you're afraid of everybody. Okay. And so that's the deal is it's a signal that, hey, there's something I'm warning you of from your past. And that's the opportunity to face it and overcome it rather than back down and work around it. Just continue on the same path and do the same things over and over again.
We've talked a little bit about some of the patterns, but maybe you could give some more specific signs that could be happening for folks where they are, where basically their shadow's taking over, where they're functioning from that place automatically.
Yeah, I think, a good one, like I said, we always talk about how you feel and in your mood and things like that. I think it's just where in your life do you feel really drained? What people really trigger you or make you kind of put you in a spin of drama, that you have big reactions to or intense judgments around. So the intense judgment is going to be there, that person's reminding you of something that in your past that brought you a lot of pain. And so these big reactions are really just this clue. It takes a lot of energy when these things are activated. Emotional energy is very costly, where that's what really wears us out is the stress is like playing in the background on all day, every day. And so we don't ever really get to shut down and unwind. And that's why kind of the attraction to alcohol and things like that, that basically allow us to kind of zone out and shut things down is to calm these systems, right? Because our mind isn't at ease on a pretty regular basis. And so we kind of need that break so that our body can and just let things go for a little bit. I think weed would be a good one too. A lot, yeah,
Sure.
I think it's anti for anxiety or PTSD, things like that. We just need things to get out of our head a little bit, right? So you get that calming effect on the body, and then the mind starts to shut down a little bit. And so you get a little bit of a break. So it's the big reactions, and you might overreact to small situations. That's a good clue of like, based on the context of the situation, was your reaction warranted? Did you feel like it was life and death and it was just like a minor inconvenience? Right. And so when we have those huge reactions to small things, that's a clue that something really needs our attention underneath. Another one, a common one, like that gets celebrated actually, is people constantly chasing success, being a workaholic, the grind culture, all those things. It doesn't matter what you achieve; it's like never enough. You still feel empty inside. That's a very common thing, and that's a tough one because often due to status, we prop those people up and we think it's a good thing, but it's really generally they have that one part of their life they work really hard at and the rest is kind of not going so well. So there's no other aspects to kind of center them. And so they just go all in on one area. And so that's that chasing achievement that can be a bit of a trap. You always just want to find alignment with things and dig deeper into the truths of like, yeah, what am I really here to do? What's my purpose? Rather than I'm just chasing superficial things or things that I could show other people. because generally that's you trying to prove something to one of your parents. It's not really about making you happy. That's an empty cup that never gets filled. It's always going to be empty until we go inward and try and reconcile some of that stuff so you can feel at peace. You can have success, but we also don't want it coming from that miserable place, because that's where, you see it in like Hollywood and stuff like that, where they have everything, but they're still miserable inside. When their drug addictions, things happen. I think it's like getting a little bit clear on like what success looks like for you, and just making decisions from a centered place. It's great to work hard for things. It's great to have that focus, but if it's built on pain, it's not really sustainable. Or if it's built on emptiness or abandoning yourself, that's always not going to feel good. It's important to take those things into account. Avoiding stillness or emotional discomfort is another good sign. A common one for people when I meet them is, oh, I don't do feelings. That may have been one of yours when we first started.
Yeah.
Yeah, avoiding feelings. I'm not good with feelings. All those things. That comes from a lot of times having to be the mature one, growing up too fast. You didn't have time to feel feelings. You just had to keep moving forward. So we dissociate from the feeling sense, but this feeling sense it's the key to everything. That's your nervous system telling you what's going on with you. And that's why I'm so focused on it, is because that's where we actually resolve all these problems, is based on how you feel. In leadership or work, it might be micromanaging people, like I need to control everything, not receiving feedback well, right? Getting really reactive when people are trying to tell you things you can improve. That's another sign that maybe there's some deeper things here, that maybe you had a parent that was hypercritical or picked you apart or whatever it is. And generally, if somebody's reactive, they're already picking themselves apart, that they were trained to do that by their parents and then they're doing it. And if they, at least they have control over that part. But if it's the message is coming from anybody else, then it activates that wound again. It's really that big emotional reaction. Every time I feel uncomfortable, I reach for my phone, or I need a substance to chill me out, or whatever it is. Those are kind of cues that there's things within me that need some attention, that are stirring, that it's really that invitation to find some peace over some things if we go into the feeling and explore it and try to understand it at a deeper level. Because many people, sadly, don't do this work, and they build their life on lies about themselves. Whereas it's all about achievement and all these things, where they don't even know who they are anymore at some point, because they just been driven by the pain so long. And then these things hit a point where, what am I going to do now? I might as well just keep going. It's always asking that bigger question. What do I want out of life? Yeah, do I want to do the work to try and settle some of these things out, or am I just okay running on stress all the time? No judgments. There's consequences of that way of being. There are some people that just want to achieve a lot and really build a legacy, and they care less about their health or anything like that than anything else. So whatever you want to do, if that's not doing it for you, there are other options. There's different ways of looking at these things. And it isn't always an all or none thing. There's a balance. There's like, yeah, I can have success, and I can also have family time and be present and have good relationships and things like that.
When you were going through all of that where you were giving these examples of like what it could look like and people who maybe don't want to do the work, I think, one of the reasons that I personally was like, I want to do the podcast with you, Brandon, and talk about these topics and be able to share them more widely. I just think about it, and I know I mentioned this on a podcast a while ago, but I just think about this as like a gift. When you're like, oh, people don't want to do this until something bad happens. Yes, that's absolutely true, but I just wish so much for people to want to do it before that, so that they can understand like the difference that going into these spaces in themselves will make in their life.
We're all running from ourselves until we don't. It's got to be an invitation. It's got to be something, a curiosity that you're interested in. Because once you open the door, you generally don't want to stop doing this, because you just keep feeling better and better and better. It's a timing thing. And sometimes you need like the right recipe of things to open up for a person to be receptive of it. And I guess for me, one of the big struggles is I've taken so many like different dynamics and issues like to the bottom. I see them clearly in other people. And the things can struggle with your whole life, we can shift in like a conversation a lot of times. And you don't have to live that way. And it doesn't have to be this huge thing. It can be, oh, I can finally see this thing differently. And that can be like incredibly freeing, right? That's, I think, the gift is freedom, is getting to that point of I've like felt empty inside, or I've felt this way forever about myself. And I don't have to feel that way anymore. Once we shift out of that, your mind like kind of like deletes that filter where you can like you start to see everything differently. I think that's like just a such an incredible thing. I think a lot of people, it's it is the feeling alone with it. It is the insecurity piece of feeling like we're the only one with the problem. I think that's a huge block. Or yeah, I don't have the time to slow down, those types of things. And this work can be as intensive as you want it to be, or it could be like as slow paced and methodical. There's different versions of it, but I think it's the same. You can create peace in some areas that maybe you felt like it was impossible to have peace over. I think that idea is like priceless because you don't know who you are without this pain. But if you let go of that pain, it could really open up for you, and you could like blossom into a whole different person, which is kind of something we've seen with you, right? It's like you just
Sure.
like this eagerness, or you're taking all these steps that when we first met, none of this was really in view, right?
Right.
Yeah. So yeah, very cool stuff. Yeah.
I think in what you just said, it's an example of how doing this work brings back like a level of personal power. Maybe just talk a little bit more about how that can work. We can continue to use me as the example in this case, but however you would talk about that, leaning in and what we get out of it.
The main idea here would be around integration. So we have this original split of ourselves. So I have to be this way, and this is who I really am. And so I have to shut down this stuff and operate from this. There's all this stuff that's locked away. And when we start to do this work, all the things that are shamed and disowned, like we start to see it differently, where we release the shame and we release all the things that we've had to suppress. Yeah, because we're seeing it differently, and it's actually safe to own these things now too. And so what that does is that when we unwind the shame and also process and let go of the pain, and maybe even bring in some forgiveness and things like that, basically this energy that's been locked away gets integrated back into the whole. So it's like this recalibration happens within your system. And with your nervous system, what that's going to feel like is you might have like problem areas where maybe I've had like tight hips, or nagging kind of injuries, or is my body that just, or back, things that just feel tight all the time. And so when we let go of these things, we start to create more space in the nervous system. Okay. So things start to relax and open up, and it frees up a ton of that energy that's been locked away and suppressing things. So it's very costly energy wise to basically shut things down. Our natural inclination is our system is electrical. And it's always pushing these things to the surface, but our mind can shut them down. And it's when our mind shifts and we start to let go of things, when these things pop through to the surface, now it's like I'm unlocking these aspects of myself, and kind of returning this flow back to my system. And so that's gonna feel like more energy. My perception's I'm gonna gain wisdom, because when I unlock these things, I'm seeing them differently, and I understand, oh, this held me back, but then I gained all these skills, and these I learned to navigate situations this way. I became very resourceful. And so the wisdom that comes out of it, it like comes in our point of view, where I'm able to see dynamics within people better. So that's gonna be emotional intelligence. It's gonna like automatically develop as you understand yourself at a deeper level. So that's an extremely valuable skill. And this integration is like we start to be in tune with the things that are based on our past that we're no longer aligned with. That's going to feel really uncomfortable. It's going to feel inauthentic. It's going to feel like we're forcing ourselves to do something that we've outgrown. The idea is when you know a better way to do it, why would you do the old way? Once you see something, like you can't go to unseeing it. So once you like open these doors, it's just, oh, I can literally transform and change anything I want. It just takes me understanding myself at a deeper level and freeing up these aspects of myself that have been locked into shame. The integration process is our system opens up, our perception changes. We start to be more relaxed. We start to interact with people differently. We start to be more present. Rather than me looking for all the red flags in somebody, I can just be with them. I can be aware of those things, but I'm not what you learn the wisdom to handle things effectively rather than operate out of fear from them. So I'm able to be more present in my relationships. I'm able to connect better with other people because I don't have as many judgments. The judgments are just coming from my pain and I'm trying to protect myself. So when I surrender those, I can connect better with other people. I just start to show up more embodied. And so I think a big problem is like we get really wrapped up in the mind and we intellectualize everything. And that's only, I'm operating out of something consciously there. I'm not embodying is I can actually like practice what I preach. I can actually live through the things I'm talking about, not just in theories. So the mind is just these theories that I'm thinking about these things. And that's kind of my gripe with strategies. Everybody's got strategies for things. Well, yeah, that's stuff that's worked for other people or whatever. But I'm always about who are you bringing to the table though? What are you embodying? If you're embodying sabotage, like no system's going to work for you. Like you're going to ruin everything that comes your way. So it's getting yourself up to speed with things where you can actually comprehend at a deep level and live out these concepts that we talk about. And so that means getting out of the mind and actually at peace in the body. We think that we really value like the mind and the intellectual part of things, but that's a very surface level operating. It's self-belief is really about really taking up space and owning who you are. And that's being authentic and that's being resilient. And that's really operating out of wholeness where I'm like, I'm staying within myself and acting from my current understanding of things. Once you go down this road, it continually evolves where you like learn deeper and deeper truths. So you can embody things at a greater level. So the integration process is it's peeling back the layers and deepening your thought process about everything. So you're starting to see deeper levels of reality rather than just like the surface level stuff. Once you start to understand the deeper levels, it starts to become really interesting because when you see how these things work, then it's, oh, I'm in control of everything. Really, it is that personal power piece of I just have to unlock these aspects of me that are trying to protect myself for my next level. And so I need to heal things in that process. And when I heal it, I'm taking something from that negative place. I'm finding the positives in it. I'm learning the lessons, gaining that wisdom, and I'm completing the circle of the positive and the negative. And then when I do that, it collapses and I integrate it into my being. When that happens, I don't really have to think about things. It's just a part of me now. When we do this podcast, like I literally just show up and talk, like, because I've learned to embody all these things. I don't really think much. I just do this work on myself constantly, and all this information flows through me from doing that. There's no preparation involved. It's just embodied wisdom from me doing thousands of hours of shadow work. It's I love studying dynamics between people in relationships and all these different things. I just focus on it until I get to peace with it. And from that place, I can kind of see where the problems get created and usually it links back to all the things we're talking about. Oftentimes we want the surface level solutions, which are band-aids. This is where you can resolve things at a deep level and be free of it for the rest of your life and never have to think about it again. So I really don't see any other way because this just makes too much sense to me at this point. And there's so many like cool gifts that come out of it. But it's just like, why wouldn't you want to understand yourself? Why wouldn't you want to make conscious decisions rather than just reacting to everything? The reaction's only going to get you so far. It's basically going to get you to the same results as your parents if you're not taking a look at things. We develop this calmness in the nervous system so that you can be present and really focus on things and be conscious about your decision making. And you really just keep creating deeper levels of awareness that keeps leading you down this path to truth, which is like you really being connected to yourself and acting from that place, which is not about protection. It's not about me it's not about fears. It's not about any of that stuff. It's about me finding joy and love and all those things in my life and just being able to radiate that on a regular basis rather than getting plugged into scarcity and survival and competition and all those things. It's like you just focus on what you can control and that that starts to unlock and open up all these different aspects to yourself that you didn't even know you had. And that's what's like pretty cool is there's so many gifts that start to spring up throughout this process and literally transforms you into something really unexpected. But it's a blend of all the things that have happened to you, but without the pain, that creates some pretty cool results.
Yeah. It used to amaze me when you would talk about how you didn't think about things, you didn't prepare, you didn't think about things ahead of time. And I remember when we first started working together, that felt so foreign to me. I couldn't imagine that at all. And now I find myself in that place too, where I don't have to put the same level of effort into certain things that I used to have to put in. So it's just a recognition too, right, of that through doing the work regularly, you actually can get to those places, even if in the beginning it feels impossible.
What's natural doesn't take preparation. So preparation, oh, like you should work at things and all that stuff. Yeah, we get a general outline just that I skim through, but there's not much thought that goes into it. And it is just, that's just kind of frame up a conversation. But the preparation is generally like there's fears and insecurities in that I'm trying to work off of. That's me filtering information. Anything that's scripted, it's just I don't trust myself to just show up in the moment. The way I've always wanted to teach is kind of like improv with comedy, where you just kind of it's a little bit of winging it, but it's me really trusting myself because of unlocking all these deep aspects. It's just like I can kind of plug any problem into this philosophy where I can just guide somebody through it because I've done that so many times with myself. It's just that it's taken tons of practice, but that practice is just about trusting myself ultimately. That's what you try to like trusting yourself is about this freedom of I trust that I can navigate situations because of all the work I put into something. That's also confidence is going to be a similar idea, but it's that letting go where things can like spontaneously come up within you. I might be like speaking specifically to one listener that they need to hear something in a certain way, and then that makes things click for them. I don't know that, but it's like I'm leaving freedom for things to go how they need to go and being not being attached to any particular outcome.
Awesome. Do you have any thoughts further that you want to close on?
With this idea of the shadow, we tend to think darkness is like the scary thing, but it's just really it's things we've suppressed, denied, all that stuff. But it's all parts of yourself that are true for you. Okay. It's just we've made negative judgments about them. It's about shifting the judgment. It's about self-compassion of like, I needed to shut this down to be safe in this environment, but this is ultimately what's making me miserable or or what's holding me back at this level. When we return back to wholeness, I'm letting go of this suppression. I'm letting go of all the blocks and I'm just opening my system back up. And you just feel a lot more relaxed most of the times. Things that used to really bother you a lot less. It's kind of this evolving process where the amount of gifts that you get from doing this, I think they are like the most valuable gifts in the world because it's getting you back to yourself. And that's really what we're all after. If we're in a relationship with another person, they're just mirroring aspects of ourselves that we've shut down. That's the thing that triggers us about our partner. One way or another, this stuff's going on, whether you're conscious of it or not. But when you face it and move through it, it's kind of a homecoming. I thought I lost this part of myself. And you can always, it's always there. We've locked it away to protect it. And so when we do shadow work, we're unlocking it and we're gaining the wisdom from the experience. So it's actually, we get the bonus of the wisdom, which is like I learned to navigate in a better way. And I also have like important things to share with other people. Like I have gifts to give other people now because I've gone through that cycle and I understand this thing at a deeper level. So that's also a big reward that comes from it is I have a unique point of view and perspective I can share with others that might help them through their own problems as well, which is that bonus gift, which that type of work is really fulfilling. And I think that's at the end of the day, I think a lot of us just want to feel fulfillment in our work and the things that we're doing. That's an easy way to kind of sprinkle that in. And it doesn't have to be doing a job like mine. It could be you're at the office and You're just connecting with a coworker and holding that space for them and maybe sharing some things that really unlock something for them. That could be everyday situations.
I really enjoyed the conversation today. I think it was super good. If someone feels, motivated or something has sparked some interest from this conversation in getting to work with you deeper, going into those places and learning more about that, working through those shadows with you as a guide, where are the best places for them to find you and set up time?
Yeah, so you can schedule a free 30-minute strategy session with me on my website, brandonthielk.com. So that's probably the best way for me to get to know you and understand your situations and present a plan for how I can help. I do group work. I work with leaders, athletes, really anyone that's eager to learn and grow and understand themselves a little bit better. So you can also sign up for my weekly newsletter on my website. There's a little box for that there. I give a weekly insight to focus on, and then there's recaps of the podcasts and different things that I've got going on in there. So that's a good place. And then also, if you want to follow me, Brandon Thielk on Instagram, post there pretty regularly to get some insights and maybe start to frame up this work a little bit better for you. There's always stuff being thrown up on there. So if you guys have any questions, feel free to email me or DM me. Next week, we'll be together for our 25th episode. So that's super
Yeah.
exciting. Big milestone there. And we're going to do an
Yeah.
ask me anything. So hopefully you guys send some good questions for me. And I would love to make this as personal as possible for whatever you're going through and shine some light on that stuff for you.
Sounds good. Yeah, I'm super excited about this one in person. So it'll be fun.
All right. Well,
All right,
let's
cool.
see you next time.
Yeah, talk to you later,
All right.
Brandon.